We are about to use JavaScript to scrape a website. So in this project, I'm going to use XKCD.com. So this is a website where you have these funny comics. So each comic is an image, as you can see, and it follows a URL pattern like this. So for example, if I go to xkcd.com/1, you view a comic, and if I click next, the second one loads, and so on. So there are about at least 2000 comics. So if I go to xkcd.com/2000, you can see that it leads to a page. So what we are about to do is we are going to scrape this entire website. That is, we are going to download all these 2000 images, and we are going to save it in our secondary disk. So we are going to make use of Node.js for this entire project, and I'm going to use a library called Cheerios. So let's get started. So let me create a folder called Node Scrape. I'll select the folder with VS Code. Now let's initialize the project. So let me quickly enter and then let's create a JavaScript file. So this is where this project will contain only one single file, and this is where all our logic will be present. So yeah, so we'll be making use of the request library to fetch the data from the URL. So first let's import that library. And then we'll be using something called Cheerio. This is essentially jQuery on the server side. It's just the implementation of jQuery that will allow us to select the DOM nodes. So you will see why this is used for web scraping. And yeah, now let's send a request to the URL. So the syntax is request of you pass in the URL. So by default it sends a it sends a get request. So let me send a get request. So the first is the URL, and next the callback function that will be called. So the callback function will be called with three parameters. One is the error, the next is the response, and the next is the HTML. So we'll check if there is any errors. So if there is any errors, what we'll do is we'll console log saying that an error occurred. If there are not any errors, we'll console log the response that we get. So before we run it, we need to install the libraries. So the libraries have been installed. So just quickly run our app to check whether it's working. Yeah, we get a long object in case of response, and it contains a lot of metadata. This response object contains a lot of metadata, but the one that we care about is the HTML content of it. So in order to get the HTML content, what we can do is we can console log the HTML part of it. Yeah, so we get the HTML content. So what we are going to do is, this is the entire HTML content of the page that is present inside this HTML variable. So what we'll do is we'll load this HTML content within the Cheerio library. So in order to do that, we create a variable by the name of $. You can name this anything you want, but by convention we use $sign for jQuery, and as I said, Cheerio is the jQuery implementation for the server side. We are going to use $. So now we load the entire HTML into Cheerio. Now what we can do is we can use a jQuery functionality here. For instance, we can do something like $, and let's say we want to select Yeah, in order to know what we want to select, let me quickly go head back to the website. And here, if I click on, we need this image. So as you can see, the image is present within this div called comic with the ID of comic. So we need to select this one. So yeah, I'll hash comic, because we need the div called comic and we need to select the image tag within that comic. So yeah, we need to select the image tab within the comic. Now let me, the one that we care about is this source of the image. So this is what we care about. So let me load up an image. Yeah. So this source part is what we care about in our case. So we need to select this source. That can be done by pressing .attr of src. So now if I console log, I should be getting this URL. Yep, I'm getting this URL. To check whether it works, let me head back to Chrome, and I need to type in https:// and yeah, we get the image alone. It's working fine, perfect. So now what we'll do is we'll create a variable and we'll store this value within that variable. So we'll create a variable and store this value within this variable. So the image URL will contain the URL, and then for each image we have a title. So this will be useful for us while we are saving the images. We can select this as the file name for the image. So that's what we are about to do right now. So we need to get this one. So let's see where we get the title from. Okay, the title is within a div with the ID of C title. Perfect. Now it's easy to select it. So what we can do is variable title equal to $of hash C title, and we need the inner text within this div. So we selected by. So let me just console log the title to check whether it's working. Let me console log both of these things, the image URL and the title. So yeah, the 2000th thing is XKCD phone, and yeah, of course we are getting the URL as well. This is working fine, perfect. The title is XKCD phone, and the URL is this one. Now what we'll have to do is so in some cases the titles, they can contain some special characters like / question mark star, but if a file name contains any special characters, it can cause some problems. So what we are going to do is we are going to take away all the special characters from the title. So by a easy Google search, you can come across this regular expression, this statement, where you select all the alphanumeric characters and the white space, except for these things, except for the alphanumeric characters and the white space. If there are any other characters, it will be replaced by a blank space. So by this, we will be removing every single special characters from the title. So so that when we save the file with the file name, there will be no issues. So yeah, now what we can do is now we got the image URL. Now we need to fetch the image. In order to fetch the image, we need to again send a request to the image URL and get this image alone. So to do that, we'll be again using the request library. So now what we can do is we can send a request to the URI But first, this URI is https colon plus img URL, because we don't have the https in this image URL, so we append a https to send the request. So within the request we pass the first parameters of https, and then we pipe this to the write stream. So we pipe it to a write stream, and we specify where this is supposed to be written. So in our case, let's take a directory called comics. So this directory called comics will be created within the project directory, and the image will be written there. So the name of the image would be the title, and at the end we need to add .jpg in order to ensure the file name, because as you can see, all these images they follow a JPG format. These images follow a JPG format. For that we need to specify this as .jpg. And then after the write stream is created, we can select on. So once this process is complete, once the file has been written and the stream is about to be closed, we pass in a function that will be executed. So what will happen is, we'll console log stating that the image was written. So yeah, so we console log saying that the image has been written. So yeah, now this thing should work. So let me run this. Before that, I need to first include the FS module. And let's quickly run this. Yeah, we get an error saying that fs.createStream is not a function. Yeah, I did a typo. It's create write stream. Yeah, I can get an error saying that there is no directory called comics. So what we'll do is, we'll check whether if the directory exists. If not, we create the directory. So in order to do that, we can simply write a if statement, fs.exists synchronously of director. So this will synchronously check whether the directory exists. If not, we'll make the directory synchronously. So we'll make a directory called comics. So we'll check whether the directory exists. If not, so within the project folder, it checks whether a folder called .comics exists. If it doesn't exist, we create the folder. So now let's run it. And yeah, a directory called comics has been created, and within that we get the image. Perfect. So now we need to repeat this function, repeat this given thing for about 2000 times. So we need to put this within a loop, but this is an asynchronous function, and just looping around each of this won't be a good idea. And moreover, if you are doing it one by one, it will take a lot of time. So in order to control the execution of multiple asynchronous functions, there is this special library within Node.js which is called async. So let's make use of it. So let me include the library. Now within this async library, there is a function called each of limit. So you can go visit the documentation if you need to know more about how this thing works. But essentially, this thing takes 3 arguments. One is an array. So let's say it as array of nums. And the second one is the parallel processing count. I'll explain what these variables are in a minute, but and the third is a function. So this function will be called with three variables. One is the number. So the number. Okay. So in order to make things clear, let me first create an array. So let me name this array as array of nums, and then I'll quickly create a to loop till 2000, and so as you might guess, what happens is this array of numbers will have numbers from 1 to 2000. 1 to 2000. So this array of numbers will contain numbers from 1 to 2000. So what happens is in each iteration, one number from this array will be picked. For the first iteration, 1 will be picked and will be assigned to num. For the second iteration, 2 will be picked and assigned to the num. So on for each iteration, one num will be picked. So now so the num is the first thing, and the index is the index of the execution of iteration. So we need not care about this at the moment because we won't be using this index. We will be just using the num. So now, and the third one is the callback function that will be passed to it. So yeah, let's quickly take this and put this within this function. So, and finally, we check if any error occurred. If yes, we print the error, or else we print saying done. So yeah, let me quickly explain what will happen right now. So this each of limit, this has a total of 4 arguments. First is the array of numbers, second is the pp count, and the third is this function, and the fourth is this function. So what happens is this function gets executed for each entry of this array. So for the, as you can see, the array currently has 2000 entries. So for each entry, this function will be executed, and the num will take the value of each item in the array. So for the first iteration, the num will be 1. For the second iteration, the num will be 2, and so on. So what we'll do is we'll pass this num into this. So now, so as you might imagine, for the first iteration, we send the request to the first comic, and for second iteration to the second comic, and so on. So we get the so for each iteration of this function, the num will increase by 1. So this parallel processing count, let me first declare this variable called and set it to 10. So what happens is, if we set this to 10 processors will be parallelly. So if we set this to 10 processors will be parallelly processed at any given time. So that's how we can control the execution of these asynchronous functions. So if we pass the second parameter as 10, at any given point of time, the maximum of only 10 operations, asynchronous operations, can be executed in parallel. So this gives us an control over how these things get executed. So this callback, the final is the CB function. So this callback is called whenever this function completes its execution. So we call this callback to denote that this asynchronous process has completed executing. We know that the asynchronous process is completed only when the image has been returned to the comics directory. So only then we call the function. And we can also make a quick change. We can call the number to make sure that the number of the image and the title will be printed, indicating that that image has been written. So yeah, now our project is pretty much complete. Let's give it a try. Before that, I need to install the asynchronous directory. So let me do that. npm I async --- save. So yeah, the asynchronous library has been executed, and now let's quickly run our before that, let me quickly delete this. Small typo, let me quickly fix that. And now, yeah, let me run it. Yeah, as you can see, the images are being written to the comics directory. So yeah, it's working pretty great till now. I don't see any errors. Yeah, so yeah, it's executing fine, and as you can see, the images are being written to the comics directory. But one thing I noticed that in some cases, some things throw an error. For example, so we need to print the occurrence of the error. So let's say an error is thrown at the at a given number. Let's say an error is thrown at 200. By console logging it, we get to know that an error has occurred at 2000. So at the current state of the project, if an error occurs, the project will abruptly stop. We don't want that to happen. So what we can do is, even when an error occurs, we can proceed to the next image. We can neglect that image and we can proceed to the next image. So this thing will be useful for us. So now another one thing that we can notice is that in some cases, in some cases the img URL or the title may be undefined because for any given reason that structure of the HTML document might change. So in that cases, we need to skip those. For that, we can quickly write a if loop, if statement, saying we check whether image URL. We check whether both image URL and title are present. So even if any one is undefined, we'll not send the request to this one. So we check whether the image URL and title is present, then only we send the request. Or else what we can do is, we can console log saying that we can just copy paste this quickly. We can console log saying that the error occurred, and we can move on to the next request. And quickly delete this comics directory, and let's run it again. Now instead of having this as 10, we can have this as 1. So let me run this now. Node.js. So as you can see, the images get completed one by one in a sequential order. But this might be sometimes slow, and if you have a powerful network connection, or if you have a good network connection and a powerful computer, what you can do is you can increase the number of processes that occur simultaneously. So if we set this to 100, let me set this to 100 and quickly delete the comics directory. And let me run the program again. So as you can see, things get executed way faster than what it used to. So when we had this as 1, it was pretty slow, but now as you can see, the thing is getting executed faster. But if you notice here, we have run into an error. So yeah, a quick fix would be to keep this title thing, to take this entire title thing and check this only within the so in some cases the title might be undefined, and that's why it's causing this error. So what we can do is we can place this title thing within this if statement, so that prevents this error from occurring. So in this try catch block, because in some cases while we are writing this thing, an error can occur. In order to proceed to the next thing, if an error occurs, we can do this. So if we catch an error, what we do is the same thing that we do here. You can just quickly copy paste this into it, and if any error occurs, we can proceed to the next thing. So let me delete this directory and run this again. Yeah, so I would suggest keeping this number at 10, because if you keep it too large, there is an high chances of an error to occur, and if you keep it too low, it might be slow at times. So let's keep it at a number like 10. So yeah, it's way faster than what happened with 1. So yeah, the process is complete, and as you can see, we logged every single image that was successful. And yeah, of course, I think we should have got any errors within this list. So if you keep scrolling, there are chances that you might find any errors that have occurred. So yeah, as you can see, an error has occurred at 1608. So if we have any errors, the error would be logged, and we'll be proceeding to the next image without stopping the process. So that's great. So now let's take a look at the images that we get. Wow, yeah, I think that's great. All the images have been downloaded and placed into the comics folder, and we have about 1991 images. So out of the 2000 that we requested, only 9 images failed. I think that's not very bad, and it is pretty good. So yeah, that's how you do this with Node.js. So as a quick recap, we make use of the request and the Cheerios library. The request library is used to fetch the HTML content. The Cheerio is used to select the tags that we need. It's just like jQuery. We select the tags, and once we get the image source and the image title, we send a request to the image source, and we get the original image, and we write it to our file system with the title as with the file name as the title. And then once this is completed, the next process will be started. So we are making use of the async library to go through all these requests and keep writing it.